Welcome to Ethical Perspectives. This is designed for people who are not experts in ethics. We're going to give you a hand on understanding and applying some commonly held ethical models. First, let's review some major ethical perspectives. We'll take a look at 4 commonly held models. Then we're going to read a case. We're going to analyze that case. And then here's the tricky part. We're going to try to apply the perspectives of ethics to that case. Hang on, here we go. Before we look at those 4 ethical perspectives, let's keep the big question in mind. What is good? What is virtue? This question goes back to the ancient Greeks and continues through the field of philosophy all the way today. Is it just to not willingly do evil to others? Socrates would say yes, that's a great way to start out. Is it the embrace of pleasure and hedonism? Is it acting in our own self-interest, everyone else acting in their own self-interest, and together we do good because it is in our self-interest to do good? Is it sacrifice on our own self-interest for the community good? Whatever model you choose to follow, you end up with the question of what is the standard? What is the definition? How do we articulate what is good, what is virtuous, so the rest of the people will understand us? Not easy questions. Let's take a look at 4 models. Relativism might answer this question by saying, we know what's good. We know what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. It makes sense to us if you just pause for a moment and think about it. Common sense will lead you to the correct decision, the correct behavior. Each culture has its own standards. What is right in my culture may not be right in your culture, but that's okay. We all live in our own culture. Values are relative to the culture that we're in. Well, that's a tough one to accept all the way, because aren't at least some values transcultural? Aren't there some moral goods and moral evils which transcend our culture and are shared by humanity? It's a tough one, but relativism is one way to look at it. On the other hand, deontology would say that there are universal laws which should govern all of mankind, and that doing our duty, being virtuous, is doing what is morally right. Let reason guide you. It can be figured out, and we will arrive at the same conclusions. There are certain categorical imperatives. Imperative is a strong word. You must do these things. There's a consistency, a logical consistency to all of this in ethics. Immanuel Kant, is the big mover and shaker of this theory, and he is attempting to reconcile Judeo-Christian beliefs with logic. So those of you who have a strong religious background oftentimes will find that deontology is quite appealing. Those of you who pride yourselves on being practical people may be attracted to utilitarianism, the idea that the greatest happiness is going to come from the best solution for the most people. Now, sometimes individuals may need to give in to the needs of the community because, after all, we can't all be selfish. Sometimes we have to sacrifice things because it benefits everyone. Think of traffic patterns, think of economics, think of any field where we are trying to please as many people as possible, as many times as possible, with as little inconvenience to them as possible. You start to see the utility of this theory. Well, what happens with a minority then sometimes? What happens when the majority is wrong? That can be a big problem with utilitarianism. If you find yourself looking for a middle ground between relativism, everything being culturally specific, everything being equal, and that idea of a universal law, then you might be interested in pluralism. The idea that there are many goods and values that are culturally specific, but there are some things which are transcultural, some things which are so important that every human being shares them simply by nature of being human. Now, this is not an easy philosophy. This is not an easy way of looking at ethical behavior. You need to investigate everything. You need to question everything. It's not simply enough to accept the rules or to accept your duty or to seek happiness. What you need to do is question if and when and why. Existentialists love to question things. Not an easy way of looking at stuff, but if you are a skeptical person, this may be something for you. All right, colleagues, I'm looking for cases here, something we can plug in and analyze from 4 different perspectives. Maybe not all 4, maybe your case fits 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them, but up to 4. Let me know what your case is. I'll be glad to describe it here. Obviously, you'll have the case available for reading also. Before we look at the ethics, let's pause and do an initial analysis of this case. Look at the premise and the conclusion of the writer. What are they presenting? What are they concluding? Those are the main ideas that we need to keep in mind. Then, did they present their case clearly and concisely? Does it make sense? Does it logically fall from their premise to the conclusion? Are their facts correct? If those things aren't true, then you and your classmates are probably going to be confused. You're going to be talking past each other. You're talking about a faulty case. Your final evaluation should be, this is worth investigating. If it's not, let's stop. There's no sense trying to apply an ethical model to something that isn't going to make sense. As we move to an ethical analysis of the case, keep in mind that you have 4 perspectives. You need to look at this in 4 different ways. Now, it may be that your case leads you to compare 2 of them or 3 of them, maybe not all 4 of them, but we want multiple perspectives. As you try on the different models, remember that we're not looking for guilt or innocence beyond a reasonable doubt. In legal talk, we're thinking about a preponderance of the evidence. Which model fits best? And it may be that none of them fit perfectly. That's okay. We don't expect them to fit perfectly. They're models of reality. They are not reality themselves. What fits best? What standards are you using to judge this case? What standards are the people in the case using to judge their own behavior? Are those appropriate standards? And then, as always, return to the fundamental question in ethics. What is good? What is virtuous? And how do these 4 models help explain this case? I would be remiss in my ethical duties if I forgot to thank George Reynolds. He's the author of Ethics in Information Technology. I used his 3rd edition, specifically the appendix, to summarize those ethical models. Also, Sandy Lefebvre, she's a professor at West Valley College. Thanks for sharing a lot of your stuff online. I don't know if that web link is still valid, but a lot of your stuff is there. Also, my committee members at Ethical Insights, thank you for your feedback and insights and sharing your knowledge. Enjoy!